The Taliban. Just hearing the name, it brings up some pretty powerful images, right? But here's the big question. How did a group of religious students manage to take control of an entire country? And not just once, but twice. Today, we're going to dig into that incredible and, yeah, really complex story, starting right from the very beginning. So, to really get a handle on this, we've got to go back, way back. Before all the headlines, before the major global conflicts, who exactly were they? I mean, what did they stand for? And, what was going on that let them rise so incredibly fast? All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at their origins and their honestly lightning-fast rise to power. Then, we'll get into the harsh reality of what their rule was actually like. After that, we'll cover their dramatic fall after 9/11, their comeback, and finally, try to make sense of what their legacy means for all of us today. Okay, let's dive right in at the very beginning. Because, to really understand the Taliban, you've got to start with what their name even means. It's a huge clue. So picture this. It's 1994. We're in the southern Afghan city of Kandahar. A brand new movement starts to pop up, and it's led by this pretty reclusive cleric named Mullah Muhammad Omar. This is really where the story kicks off. And like I said, their name, it tells you so much about where they came from. Taliban is the Pashto word for students. And that's exactly what they were, a movement of young guys from religious schools, mostly in southern Afghanistan, who were just completely fed up with the chaos all around them. So that raises the question, right? How on earth does a group of students go from being a small movement to basically conquering an entire country in just 2 years? Well, the answer is all about the chaos that was happening at the time. You really have to try and picture what Afghanistan was like back then. The Soviets had just pulled out, and the whole country just collapsed into this brutal civil war. I mean, for the average person, life was a daily nightmare of corruption, violence, and just zero stability. And into this total power vacuum, the Taliban steps in with a really simple but incredibly powerful promise. We'll end the corruption. We'll bring back order. Now, for people who were just completely exhausted by years of war, that message wasn't just appealing, it was like a lifeline. I mean, just think about how fast this happened. The country is in the middle of a civil war. The Taliban forms in '94, and by 1996, just 2 years later, they've captured the capital, Kabul. It was an absolutely shocking, incredibly fast takeover. Okay, so they're in power, but what did that actually mean for the people living there day to day? Let's take a look at what life was really like under their very strict interpretation of Islamic law. So once they were in control, after overthrowing the old government, they immediately imposed this incredibly severe version of Islamic law. We're talking brutal public punishments for crimes, a complete and total ban on education for women and girls, and they outlawed most music, art, and recreation. I mean, it fundamentally changed the entire fabric of daily life. But that first period of their rule, it came to a really abrupt end. And this brings us to a huge turning point in the story, an event that would suddenly put Afghanistan at the center of the entire world's attention. And the catalyst for that downfall, it happened on September 11th, 2001, the attack on the World Trade Center in the United States. That single day set off a chain reaction that would bring the world's attention and, of course, its military might, crashing down on Afghanistan. So why Afghanistan? Well, it's because the Taliban regime was giving safe haven to Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda network. The very group that planned and carried out the 9/11 attacks. The Taliban refused to hand over bin Laden, and that refusal led directly to a US-led military invasion of the country. Within just a few months, their government was completely overthrown and they were out of power. But here's the thing. Even though their government was gone, the movement itself, it wasn't destroyed. Not even close. Its leaders and fighters mostly just retreated across the border into neighboring Pakistan. And from there, they would regroup, rearm, and spend the next 20 years planning their big return. And you could see their influence starting to spread, too. By 2007, a separate but, related group had formed over in Pakistan, the Tehreek-e-Taliban. This was a clear sign that the ideology wasn't just surviving, it was actually adapting and expanding throughout the region. So, after all these decades of conflict, a rise, a fall, and then a comeback, what's the lasting legacy here? Let's try and put all these pieces together. This quote from the source material we're looking at really says it all.
It calls the story an entanglement, and that's the perfect word for it. You just can't point to one single cause. It's this complicated knot of Afghanistan's own internal instability, a very specific brand of religious fundamentalism, and, of course, the actions of major world powers.
Which, of course, leaves us with one crucial final question. This whole entanglement of local and global forces has defined Afghanistan's past for so long. So how is it going to continue to shape its future? That's really the thought we want to leave you with.